Happy to be here to now formally present Nicole Lee as a newly minted Alder person for the 11th Ward. As you know, this is an historic day for our city. Alderwoman Lee will be the first woman and first Chinese American to serve as a ward alderperson, and in fact, the first Chinese American to serve in the entire city council. Sometimes being first isn't always easy, as I can attest, but I have every confidence that her appointment will really pave, I think, the way for new avenues for us to be a more equitable and inclusive Chicago. I can promise you that somewhere young girls or young boys of Chinese or Asian American descent have heard this news and are going to be regarding it, I think, with a great sense of pride, because I think what Nicole represents is the possible, and that's important for our young people to believe that they can reach higher heights. And one of the surest ways of doing it is seeing people that represent and reflect who they are. Nicole certainly does that on a number of different fronts. She's a great civic leader, spent much of her life and career being tasked with just doing good in the world. As a CPS graduate and Chinatown native who grew up surrounded by other working class immigrant families with stories similar to that of her own family, Alderwoman Lee has the lived experience necessary to connect with residents from all walks of life, including those in the 11th Ward, and the ability to bring its communities that much closer together. Alderwoman Lee's compassion, confidence, and commitment to collaboration, on top of her more than 20 years of leadership and strong track record of service in the 11th Ward and to the Asian American community, make her deeply qualified for this role, and I have every confidence in her ability to serve. I want to thank you again for saying yes. I had such a glow and feeling of accomplishment just watching you last week. The people that were surrounding you, your family and friends and loved ones. This is an incredibly important moment in our city's history, and I'm happy to bear witness to it. I would also say to the residents of the 11th Ward, take your time and get to know this new alderwoman. She'll be out and about in the community, making sure that she's reaching out, attending community forums, and doing her own convenings. But I think what you'll find when you get to know her is somebody of great compassion, great commitment and service, a very good sense of humor, but somebody who just wants to do good. So without further ado, I'd like to invite the Alderwoman to say a few words.
Thank you, Mayor Lightfoot. My first press conference like this. Thank you for not being totally intimidating right now.
They haven't opened their mouths yet.
Okay, well, that's okay. I'm going to bask in the glow for just another second here. Thank you again, Mayor Lightfoot, for the confidence and for giving me the nod here. I couldn't be more thrilled and very intimidated and scared about what I'm about to take on. Many aldermen shared this sentiment with me. Are you sure? I think I was asked if I was sure 3 or 4 times in the meeting earlier. And I'm as sure as I am of anything else that this is the right place and the right time for me to serve my community in this way, and ensure that the people that I refer to as my community, as every member of the 11th Ward, every resident of the city of Chicago as well. I take this historic moment with a lot of stride and responsibility, representing Asian Americans and my Chinese American community. The first Chinese arrived in Chicago in the mid 1870s, about 100 years before I was born. And now, almost 150 years later, we're getting some representation, and it's me. I just got chills saying that. So thank you so much for the opportunity. I look forward to serving every member of the 11th Ward to the best of my ability and to continue to unite people and help move the city forward as well. Thank you. Was that? Sorry.
Oh.
That's never happened.
Little sound effect.
First time for everything, just like.
All right, we all right back there in AM? Can we,
Just go ahead and just Caesar, use yours.
Okay. Thanks a lot, Mayor. Appreciate it. We're going to start down the line. Asha and I will bring down the mics. 2 questions per reporters. We'll start with Coco from Cinevision. Go ahead.
Good afternoon. May I have a question for Alderwoman Lee?
You want to use this one?
Sorry. Good afternoon. May I have ask questions for Alderwoman Lee? Thank you. Congratulations again. So when you officially sit on the 11th Ward chair, what was your feeling? And do you have any detailed plans to improve the 11th Ward? Thank you.
Well, I've had the job for, I don't know, what's it been, 45 minutes? Something like that. Maybe. So it was a great feeling. I think you saw that in the smile on my face, and I was beaming with pride to have my family and my 2 sons there with me on this really historic moment. I don't have any immediate plans for improvements of the ward other than to get the office up and running, figure out what the biggest needs are at the moment, if anything was sort of hanging out there in terms of projects that and resident requests that haven't been tended to while the ward's been without an alderman. Thanks for your question, Coco.
Okay. Dana Revick, WGN.
Hi. Oh, thank you. For Mayor Lightfoot, I have one off-topic question, then I have one for you. I don't know which.
that's fine, go ahead.
So someone from our station wanted me to ask on gas tax relief. What specifically is your office looking at to give residents relief, and why was today's effort to roll back taxes abandoned?
Well, first of all, as I've said many times, the shocking escalation in gasoline prices, I think, not only is shocking to see, but it's shocking to feel and experience. And I've been talking to residents all over the city who are really feeling pinched with their inability to get the normal amount of gas that they would because their dollars are just not stretching that far. So what we're looking at is ways in which we can have maximum impact on not only in terms of the pinch that people are feeling, but the maximum number of people who can be affected. So we just needed some more time to kind of work through some solutions and make sure that we understand the economics behind it. And we'll be making an announcement here shortly about what the plan is.
Okay. And then for you, Alderwoman Lee, given the former Alderman Thompson's history and what he has been convicted of, can you speak a bit to your commitment to ethics? And I know you stand apart from your father, but it sounds he was accused of embezzling back in 2014. Just what would you like to say to constituents where you stand as far as ethics?
He was accused and he pled guilty to it. I would say that one of the biggest lessons I learned from that experience was the importance of taking responsibility for one's actions. And that's how I would respond to your question. I think absolutely. We're all human beings, and sometimes mistakes are made. And the one thing that we can do, and the pastor today actually said it in her invocation, that the best thing that we can do is take responsibility and move forward.
All right. Justin Lawrence, Blackwood.
Hi, my first question is for Alderman Lee. On Friday or Thursday, you said that you were really just focused on today's meeting and getting confirmed. Now that you've done that, do you want to update us on your plans? Do you plan to run for alderman in 2023?
So again, 45 minutes. Thank you for the question. I've had maybe 45 more minutes to think about that. I'm still committed to getting into the job, making sure that I can be a good alderperson to every resident of the 11th Ward. And I'm going to use every bit of this opportunity with this appointment to figure out if it's the right thing.
Okay. And then kind of in a similar vein, welcome to City Council, City Hall. But as you know, one of the casino sites would go in at the 78, kind of in between Chinatown and downtown. There's been some opposition from Chinatown to that. I know that that's not in the 11th Ward. It currently, it's in the 25th. But how do you feel about that? What will you look to on whether or not you would support a casino location there?
I want her to opine about a project that's not in her ward, and she's been on the job for about 45 minutes.
Fair. So I'm happy to answer the question, and that is I've got a J-shaped learning curve ahead of me, and I would not begin to opine on anything without sufficient information. So I'm going to need a little bit of time once I get everything settled to then dig into some of the more important issues of the day. But thank you for the question.
Thanks, Alderwoman. Erin Haggerty, Dela.
Good afternoon. So similarly, you got your committee assignments today, and you are a member of some pretty powerful and influential committees, including the Public Safety Committee. And I know you said that safety is one thing that you are going to prioritize. I'm just wondering, as a voting member of that committee, have you looked at the mayor's proposed victims justice ordinance that would sue gang leaders and seize their assets, and is that something you would support?
Right. Again, I've not caught up on anything yet, so I would not begin to speculate at this point without sufficient time to understand what the policies are and what the ordinances are before I would comment on something like that. But I appreciate you asking.
Okay, and more local, what about a ward office? Will you be taking over your predecessor's office, or are you considering other locations, or how will you choose where your office will be?
I plan to move into the 11th Ward office. I'll be moving into my predecessor's office at that location. It's where all of the residents know to go in the ward, and that's where they're going to continue to get services from their new aldermen and from the staff.
Front row, front track.
Thank you. Congratulations again. Mayor, question for you about the Inspector General search. Where are you on that, and when is that going to be resolved?
Soon.
Is soon a matter of?
Soon as soon.
And what about the Monuments Commission, which you launched in the summer of 2020? They were aiming for first quarter of this year. They are not going to make the first quarter of this year. When is that going to happen, and what do you want to see happen with the Monuments Commission?
Well, I think a couple of things. Number one, what's important is to make sure that we're really respectful of, I think, legacy projects that people across the city care deeply about, and particularly those that have been the subject of controversy. And I would say the Columbus statute in Grant Park in particular, making sure that if that statute comes back, which I fully expect that it will, that we have a safety plan in place. I'm not going to do anything that puts our officers in harm's way. I will probably be forever haunted by the experience of the vigilantes who attacked our officers in Grant Park that summer, came armed with not signs, but frozen water bottles, fire crackers, and other things that severely wounded many of the police officers who were there. So I've got to look at what the various issues are that the committee has flagged and make sure that as we move forward, again, we're mindful of today's conditions on the ground and engaging with community. They did a lot of work, which I commend them on, but we've got to actually then go into community. So we will get to that as soon as we're able.
Heather Jerome, front row.
Hi, Mayor. On Friday, the term of the consent decree was extended for 3 years, and it was expanded to include search warrant policy. Is that an indication that the city has more work to do on its search warrant policy, and have you reconsidered allowing a hearing on the ordinance supported by Anjanette Young and the Black female members of the city council?
No, what I think Friday says is a recognition, frankly, that 5 years was never going to be a sufficient amount of time to get the work done. As any of you have studied these issues, consent decrees, most cities are in them for 10 plus years, and some cities have been in them several times, like Cleveland and New Orleans. So I think this was frankly a recognition that most people who have studied these issues, me included, have said from day one that there's no possibility that all the work they needed to get done could get done in 5 years' time. I will say that I'm very pleased with the progress that the department has made, and I think you'll see that in recognition of the next monitor's report that comes out. I won't steal that thunder, but we are most definitely headed in a good and positive direction. The inclusion of search warrants was done by agreement, and as you know, the motion on Friday that the judge, or the order that the judge entered, was an agreed order. So I think we, as a group, the Attorney General, the monitor, and the court and the city understand the path ahead, that there's more work to be done. But I think we are all understanding what the direction is that we need to head in, and I think there's a great deal of consensus over that.
Going back to the gas tax, is there a concern if the city waives a portion of its share of the gas tax that could lead to a deficit in the city's road maintenance fund and infrastructure fund?
No. No, there's not.
Thank you, Mayor. Craig Delmore.
Hello, one for each of you.
Yeah.
For you, can you say anything about the CTA employee who's now charged with shooting someone at the station after an altercation, and any concerns going forward that incident raises?
Well, look, I'm not going to say much about it because obviously the individual's been charged and there's a pending criminal case against him, and I want to make sure that I respect his rights. He has a presumption of innocence. But I will say that I was pretty shocked by what I saw on videotape. What I would urge, and we work well with the various CTA unions, is that workers need to follow the protocols, and if there's a problem in a station, to call the control room or to call the police, and not try to engage in a volatile situation on their own. That makes no sense whatsoever. And obviously, the CTA has been very clear in condemning the fact that this worker violated CTA protocols by bringing a handgun to his job. That is not the role of CTA and personnel of any type, and certainly not those that are front-facing in the various stations or on the buses. So I won't go further with that, but it's a really unfortunate set of circumstances and a tragedy that was, I think, entirely avoidable.
Okay. And Alderwoman Lee, I get to call you that finally. I know, again, stipulating 45 minutes.
Yep.
But the issue of the new map has been around for a while, and I know you've been interested in that. If you aren't going to tell me which map you would prefer, what are the things that are important to you in this selection as we go forward, and looks like it's almost inevitable that it's going to go to a referendum?
So yes, so I'm up to probably 52 minutes now. So what's important, what's important to me, and what's going to be important in this process for me as I go out and I hear from my colleagues the work that they've done on the various versions of the map, is to look out for my residents and how to do that. Every member of the 11th Ward is going to have an opinion. Don't think that I'm going to get to every single one, but I want to hear. I want to hear from the residents, kind of what's important to them. There's obviously going to be some concern that it's change, so I'm going to go on a listening tour and do right by the 11th Ward, all the residents of the 11th Ward today. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderwoman. Ted from Frank.
Just to follow up, do you expect to make a decision on the maps, or just leave it to the people?
So After I get an opportunity to talk to my colleagues about it, I don't know from a timing perspective when that's going to happen. It's going to happen soon, though. Like I said, I'm very focused on getting my office set up and resident services taken care of, and then we'll see from there. Thank you.
Mayor, I wondered on the gas tax, were you disappointed Friday that you weren't able to get more, I guess, consensus? And is it just 3 cents? Some felt that was a stunt.
Yeah, I've seen the reporting on what our plans are, and I will tell you it's not consistent with the conversations that we've had internally. And I'll just leave it at that. I mean, I think some folks have gotten way ahead of themselves in reporting out what our plans are. I had a meeting with my team internally at 3 p.m. on Friday afternoon, and there was already reporting about what we were doing when we hadn't even met yet. So I would just say, again, our goal is to make sure that we have maximum impact to address the immediate concern that people have with being able to afford to put gas in their car to be able to travel. I'd heard, again, from somebody this morning that filled up over the weekend, $6 a gallon for regular. I mean, that's shocking to me. And the average person in our city cannot pay that much, and they certainly can't fill up. So what you've got is people hobbling together a couple dollars here and there and going to the pump and putting that in and then hoping that they can stretch that as far as possible. So we are taking the time, I think that's necessary, to make sure that we put together a proposal that will have maximum impact.
And also, could you react to the Sun-Times story about the security that is now, has, according to this article, of some 90 officers that protect you here at City Hall as well as at your home? Is that accurate, and how does that compare to previous mayors?
I don't have the number in my head, but I will tell you, and I haven't read the article yet. I think the difference is this: when I came into office, the first floor had one chain of command. The second floor had a different chain of command. The fifth floor had even yet a different chain of command, and then the detail had yet a separate chain of command. It's one building, and then what I didn't mention is the folks that are at my house were even yet a different chain of command. I think that's 5 different chains of command. So early on in our process, a determination was made that it needed to be a unified chain of command so that things were happening. The right hand would know what the left hand was doing, and we wouldn't have to worry about, okay, something's happening at City Hall, who's in charge? It shouldn't be, well, what floor is it on? Right? If there's an emergency that's here, and frankly, all of you who are in the buildings on a regular basis probably want to know that there's a plan, it's unified, and if there's some emergency that hits, that we can act with efficiency. So that was changed very early on in the process. So again, I don't have the numbers in my head, but an apples to apples comparison probably can't be made just because we've unified things in a way that didn't exist before.
Craig Wall.
Alderwoman Lee. I did want to go back to the whole idea of running for election next March, and I just wonder, had you not given any thought to it when you were thinking about accepting the appointment and even applying for the job, that, do I want to do this just until next spring, or do I want to do this long term?
I think it would be silly of me to tell you anything, but of course I've thought about it. I've had to, because many people have asked me that question. And I'm going to use every moment of this gift that I have in an appointment and the faith that the mayor has in me to be the alderman of the 11th Ward, to figure out if it's something that I can do and do well, and then make a decision from there.
And as you look ahead, and it's probably, 56 minutes?
We're probably up on an hour now.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
I get an hour.
Yeah, you get an hour.
Obviously, you've had a chance to think about, what lies ahead. You've said numerous times you want to get a chance to know the residents, but what do you expect are going to be your biggest challenges going in there? Is it going to be the change that you're bringing into the office, or is it going to be something else?
I think it's going to be a big change for a woman to be sitting in the office that I'm going to be occupying and moving into. I think that's going to be different for a lot of people, and I've already gotten outreach from some residents. I met some this morning while we were handing out White Sox stickers, and I'm really been really pleased with just the number of people who have reached out and congratulated me, and are looking forward to this change. It's an absolute change. It's a huge change, and what I'm going to bring to the ward really is a kind ear, an empathetic one to whatever struggles people are having right now, and we're going to manage that together.
Mariah Wokel, WBEZ.
Thank you. Hi, Alderwoman, Alderman. Do you have a preference yet?
Alderwoman is fine.
Alderwoman Lee, congratulations.
Thank you.
I have a couple of questions regarding the 2016 bankruptcy case on your behalf.
Sure.
Specifically, when a trustee argued that your case should be dismissed because you misstated and misreported your finances and expenses, why didn't you object to that dismissal?
I got advice from counsel that it probably wasn't going to be beneficial to me. And unfortunately, that's the way it went. You know, my case was dismissed, not discharged. So I settled my debts. They were completely paid. And I'm glad that that's behind me. But I'm glad that there are tools in place for people like me who ran across financial hardship to take responsibility for their debts.
And do you think that the case was dismissed based on the argument that you misstated your finances and expenses should be of concern to constituents, given the fact that you'll be managing the resources of the 11th Ward and potentially voting on budgets in the future?
Yeah, I can't opine on what the judge was thinking at the time. You know, as I mentioned earlier, I'm really glad that I was able to take responsibility for those things, and I will lead the 11th Ward to the best of my ability in a responsible manner. So personally, I don't think that the 11th Ward residents should be concerned about that, and if they are, good for them. They should be, and I should be held accountable for everything that I do in representing the ward. I hope that the residents of the 11th Ward give me an opportunity to show them in my actions.
Moving on to Alex Nipkin, Daily Line.
Thank you. Hello. My questions are for the mayor today. I wanted to first follow up on Greg's question about the IG search. You
About what, I'm sorry?
The IG search.
Yeah.
You filled this vacancy in 6 weeks. The IG appointment coming up on 6 months pending. What would you say to folks who take that as a sign that it's being, slow walked?
Well, it's not being slow walk. I mean, if you look at the ordinance, there's a pretty specific process. I don't get to just make a decision and then choose. There's a process where you've got to appoint members of a selection committee. Then you've got to, the selection committee's got to hire a search committee. Then the search committee's got to do a nationwide search. Then they've got to bring people back to the selection committee. Then the selection committee's got to make recommendations to me. That's not a quick process. There's no possibility that if you're executing that with fidelity, that it will be a quick process.
So there was also a selection committee in this process. Is it just that there are more rules attached to the other, or what would you
Well, I just named you in the selection committee, the selection process for the IG, about 5 different steps. Not the same.
I also wanted to ask about, over the weekend, the Bring Chicago Home Coalition and Chicago Coalition for the Homeless held an event sort of re-upping their proposal to get a referendum question on the ballot to raise the real estate transfer tax on transactions more than $1 million to pay for a more anti-homelessness program. Of course, you supported a version of a graduated real estate transfer tax in the past, so I just wanted to sort of gauge your feelings on this now.
Well, I think what you should look at is the amount of money and resources that we have allocated over these last few budgets to making sure that we're addressing homelessness. I don't have the numbers at my fingertips, but it's tens of millions of dollars over what had ever been allocated before. So I share the core concern, which is making sure that we do everything we can to take people off the street, to put them in supportive housing, and to address the causes that create people having housing instability. We've done that in a number of ways, through transitional housing, making sure that we've got enough shelter beds, taking care of the people that are in our shelters, particularly through COVID, and then the work that we've been doing all around the city on affordable housing. So I think the record of support on issues related to homelessness is a good one. And as I said, we put our money where our mouth is, and we'll continue to do that.
Thanks a lot, Mayor. Mallory?
Hi, Mayor. I just have a question about the gas tax. When you talk about you're looking for the maximum impact, does that mean that you're looking at details beyond the gas tax? And if you're looking at details, do you have any specifics for us?
When we have the plan ready, we'll definitely let you know.
Okay. And for Alderwoman Lee, just a quick question about your qualifications and what do you bring to the table over all of the other candidates to the 11th Ward? What do you think that you're really just going to kill coming into it?
Well, thank you for the question. I didn't read in detail every single resume, so I'm not going to comment on what I have over everybody else. I'll comment on what I think I bring to the table, and what I think I will kill at, and that is connecting with people. Hopefully you all have seen a little bit of that with just the person that I am, the human being that I am, and how present that I can be with other people. I think it makes all the difference when people feel that they're heard and seen, and that's what I plan to do.
Thanks a lot, Mayor. Thanks a lot, Alderwoman.
Thank you.
Thank you.